Superman and Lois. Season 3, Episode 10, Collision Course. Lois goes to see Peia at the DOD, where she's in custody and getting ready to die from cancer. She wants to get a confession from her, and Lois convinces Peia to talk by telling her that stories are going to be written about her after she's gone, and this is her last opportunity to tell her side. Peia agrees. Lois tells Peia she thinks it was Peia and Bruno who killed Boss Moxie, and not Lex Luthor. This brings up an interesting ethical discussion. Lois is upset that she helped put Lex Luthor in jail for a crime that he didn't commit. Peia is okay with it because she knows of far worse crimes that Luthor committed that he's never paid for. In this instance, Lois is torn with what is the right thing to do. When she talks to Clark, Clark says it isn't up to them to decide. All they can do is tell the truth. When pressed for an actual confession, Peia refuses to admit that she and Bruno framed Luthor, and she tells Lois to leave and not come back. But Lois does come back, and she tells Peia that she should talk to her for Mateo's sake, and that she should show that she has regrets about what she has done. Peia agrees, but she wants to talk to Mateo first, because she wants him to hear it from her. Mateo comes in. He has the cure that Mannheim has been working on for Peia's cancer hidden in one of his cufflinks. Peia is injected. Mateo leaves. Lois comes in, and a cured Peia breaks out of the DOD and reunites with Bruno and Mateo. Also in this episode, Lana met with the governor while Sarah went off to a party with George Jr., the former mayor's son. Jordan, Jonathan, and Candace are also at this party, and when the party is busted by the cops, Sarah and Jr. get in Sarah's car and drive away. They have the headlights off because they don't want the cops following them, and when Sarah turns the headlights back on, there's a deer in front of them. Sarah swerves and rolls the car. Jordan heard the accident happening. He flew in and he saved Sarah and George Jr. In the aftermath, Jr. caught a glimpse of Jordan and insists someone saved him and Sarah. Sarah denies she saw anything, but Kyle is very interested in what Jr. has to say. Kyle goes to the diner where Lana is talking to the governor, and Sarah's arrest puts an end to that. Sarah's in the back of a cop car, and she's being charged with DUI. Back at Lana's house, Kyle isn't happy when Sarah and Lana both disagree with his assertion that someone with powers saved Sarah and Jr. Jordan calls out to his father, and Jordan is worried because he thinks Jr. saw him when Jordan saved them from the car accident. Clark tells Jordan that he did the right thing, and if Jr. saw him, then they would deal with that. This is a huge difference from what we saw in that Man of Steel film, where Kevin Costner's version of Jonathan Kent is telling Clark to let him die in order to protect Clark's secret. Absolute opposite. I like this version of Clark Kent much better. Clark notices Jordan smells like beer. Not that that beer can probably do anything to Jordan, given his Kryptonian DNA, but Clark's upset because Jordan and Jonathan lied to him about their plans, canceling plans with him, and then going to the party. So both Jonathan and Jordan are grounded. When Jonathan gets home, Clark is angry with him and confronts him. Jonathan tells Clark that Clark is the one who's always busy. They can't just sit around and wait for him. Clark basically lets him get away with that. Jonathan just walks off. Jonathan would rather have spent time with his girlfriend than his father, which I guess any 16-year-old boy is probably going to want to do. But still, that seemed a little bit wrong that Jonathan is complaining that they're the ones sitting around waiting for Clark. I mean, his father is Superman. What does he expect him to do? Just let people die because it's family time? That's just ridiculous. But this is one of those character flaws that I've disliked in Jonathan from the very beginning. So that doesn't surprise me any. Kyle gets it in his head that Jonathan is the one with powers, and he goes to confront Jonathan. Clark comes out of the house. Kyle is trying to convince Clark to let him talk to Jonathan. Clark is trying to convince Kyle that he's wrong. And while he's trying to convince Kyle that he's wrong, Clark hears Peia breaking out of the DOD. He tries to get Kyle to leave, but Kyle won't let it go. Clark says he has to go. Jonathan and Jordan come out of the house. Kyle tries to push past Clark to get to them, and Clark is like a brick wall. Kyle looks very surprised when he can't push past Clark. Clark tells Kyle to go home, and he tells Kyle that he will explain it all to him tomorrow. And that's when Clark shoots off into the sky and flies away. Kyle is just left there, standing in the yard, staring up at the sky. He is absolutely stunned. When Clark makes it to the DOD, Peia, by that time, is long gone. Earlier in this season, I could tell Sarah was out of control. Several episodes ago, it was obvious that Kyle would have to be told. He's going to be hurt when he finds out that basically everybody around him knew, and he didn't. And I kind of wonder if this doesn't spell the end for him and Chrissy, when he finds out that she was keeping such a huge secret from him, and he kept insisting that there was someone with powers who was helping the fire department, and she was trying to convince him otherwise. And of course, Bruno, Mannheim, and Peia, they've now made Mateo an accessory to their crimes. That is really, really wrong. I can understand wanting to keep Peia alive, but what they've done to Mateo, he's going to be responsible now for all of the crimes that his mother commits now that she is healed and she's broken out of custody. We'll just see what that does to him, having to carry that burden and responsibility.
This was an okay episode for me, but it felt like filler. I know Kyle, him finding out, moves it forward, but I've made this joke before about how when I watch a show like this with a superhero, I want to see what I call pro wrestling action, at least as part of the story. And the only pro wrestling action we got this week was when Clark bought pro wrestling tickets for the boys, and he had that pro wrestling shirt on. And the boys turned him down, and you could see he was heartbroken when the kids wouldn't go with him. It's not like I think this was a bad episode, but I feel they've spent plenty of time establishing Season 3's storylines, and I wish we would start to move forward with something. And it's a nitpick, but when Mateo injected his mother with the cure or treatment, I assume it's a cure, but we don't know if it's a permanent cure or just a treatment, it was like Popeye eating spinach. Like, she turned away for like 30 seconds, and then she was fine. To me, I realize this is a show that has a guy flying around and throwing cars and stuff. So I understand it's a superhero show. So realism isn't exactly what you're going to get from a show like this. But it took me a little bit out of my suspension of disbelief. I wish she would have got the injection, and then over the course of like the next few days, she would slowly be getting better and better. To me, that would have been more realistic, and then she could have broken out next week. But that's just me. It's a nitpick. I did like the comparison that you made with Man of Steel, because I agree with you. This Clark Kent is so much more in line with what I'm used to than what they were doing in Man of Steel. But that's just me. Again, I've said this before. I'm not a comic book person. Maybe somebody has a whole run of issues where Man of Steel Superman ran for 15 issues. I don't care. I don't want that Superman. However, I want a Superman. And at the end, when he flew off, when Kyle was detaining him and he flew away to the DOD, that's the only time when he landed, he was in his Superman outfit. That's the only Superman we saw this week. I wasn't crazy about last season and that cult and what we call Space Karen as the bad guy, or bad person. But at least we saw Superman. We're not seeing any real superhero stuff. They're making this kind of like Dawson's Creek or something, if we go back to those days. I don't mind that being part of the story, but when are we going to start getting superhero stuff? I want to see the superhero stuff. So that's my only criticism. This wasn't a bad episode. It had a lot of character development. The teens did their thing. Mannheim did his thing. Peia is cured and escapes. Stuff did happen. Kyle's probably going to find out Clark as Superman. Maybe after next week when all the blowback from this happens, maybe we'll get like 2 or 3 episodes, I don't know how many episodes are left, of actual superhero show. Because that's my big complaint with this season is there's been little bits of superhero-y stuff, but it's mostly just a drama. And I don't know, I want a balance. It's not like I want the drama piece to go away. I appreciate the human interaction and having people that I care about and things happening to them, but I'd also like some superhero stuff going on. So maybe next week or the week after we'll start to get that.
Yeah, there are 3 episodes left. So they've got 3 episodes to wrap up this season. We will see if you are satisfied at the end. Other than that, I really don't have much to say about this episode. To me, this was a bridge episode. It was stuff that needed to happen to move the story forward. I do feel like this could have been written better. As far as I'm concerned, there have been at least 2 bridge episodes this season, and then a couple of episodes that were not really even necessary at all back at the beginning of the season. Overall, I mean, I guess I'll wait till after the final episode to make my final assessment. I've enjoyed the season for the most part, but it's definitely been a departure from the previous 2, where Space Karen was a threat to the whole planet, and the first season where Superman's brother was a threat again to the whole planet. So, Bruno Mannheim is really small potatoes as far as the grand scheme of villains goes. Obviously, we have Lois's illness now as well, so a very different feel this season than the previous 2. And at the end, I guess then I will make an assessment as to whether or not that worked better, or was just different, or if it didn't really work. We'll just have to wait and see. Well, what did you guys think of this episode? What did you think of our comparison of that one scene with what happened in Man of Steel, where that Jonathan Kent was encouraging his son Clark to keep his gifts hidden, even if it meant he himself, Jonathan Kent, would die? Or do you prefer this version, where Clark is encouraging his son Jordan to save people, and if someone saw him, they will deal with that then? I prefer the latter instead of the former, I'll tell you that much. What did you guys think? Leave your comments in the space below.
Take care.